Let me tell you an old story. It's not really a story about kings and castles, but about two forces that are always at war, maybe even inside of us. You've got this desperate desire for a perfect, orderly life, like a manicured garden. And then you have the terrifying, chaotic call of the wild abyss that's always lurking just outside the walls.
So that brings us to the real question at the heart of this whole thing. When you build a life, or even a whole society, that's perfectly safe and perfectly ordered, what have you actually created? Is it a fortress that can stand against the chaos of the world? Or is it just a really beautiful, really fragile cage? One that's destined to shatter the moment it touches reality?
So, at the very core of our story, you have these two giant, opposing ideas. You've got the garden, which represents society and order, and then you have the abyss, which is, well, it's everything else. The untamed, the unpredictable, the wildness of nature, and, the truth. And here it is, laid out plain and simple. On one side, you have the manicured order. This whole world is built on what the story calls the gray stone of reason. Everything is neat, predictable. Every rule, every law has some kind of noble justification. It feels incredibly safe, right? But it's brittle. On the other side, you've got the atavistic wild. This is the raw spirit of gravity, that force of reality you just can't escape. It's a world of wild, tangled roots and a kind of terrifying freedom that only comes when you stop pretending and face what's real. Okay, so who's in charge of this perfect, gilded world? That would be the prince. Let's take a look at how he builds an entire kingdom that is basically a monument to illusion, the ultimate fragile garden.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? The kingdom of the masked sun. Its people are living in a collective slumber, basically a shared dream. They build these massive ivory towers, convinced that being physically higher up makes them morally superior. But really, it's all just one big attempt to escape the spirit of gravity, to escape the raw truth of the world down below. And the prince, he's the master architect of this whole fantasy. He's not a leader who truly embraces life. The parable calls him a merchant of existence. Think about that. His life is a series of transactions. He literally trades away the authentic, messy, terrifying freedom of the abyss for something safe, predictable, and clean, a polished reputation. And this worldview leads him right into what the story calls the trap of vanity. It's this all-too-human idea that if you can just make enough noise, throw enough parties, and build enough walls of noble justifications, you can somehow drown out the quiet, constant hum of the universe. That sound of reality, of time, of things falling apart. So what is he so afraid of? It's not some enemy at the gates. No. He's terrified of the unscripted animal force deep inside himself, that wild, instinctual part that we all have. But instead of accepting it as just biology, he treats it like a ghost that needs to be driven out, so his entire reign becomes this one long, frantic party, a deafening noise designed so he never has to hear the truth whispering to him in the silence.
So what's the endgame here? What's the price you pay for living in this garden of denial? Well, the parable makes it brutally clear. Fatal stagnation. See, by walling off the wild parts of himself, his soul doesn't get cleaner or purer. It becomes a pressurized tomb. There's no growth, just a slow, suffocating decay.
But you can't keep reality out forever, right? Eventually, something has to give, and that's when the High Judge arrives, a spirit that is the living embodiment of everything the prince and his perfect little kingdom have tried so desperately to push away. Now, the judge isn't just some guy. The text calls him an atavistic force. That word means he's like an echo of something ancient, something primal. He shows up in robes the color of internal magma. He's basically the raw, untamed earth given human form. He is the abyss, walking and talking. And this is where his real power comes from. He doesn't show up with soldiers or weapons. His power is purely philosophical. He brings something called the seventh solitude. It's this idea of a truth so absolute, so isolating, that it just shatters all your comfortable little lies and cuts you off from the safety of the herd. And so, here we are, the climax. The moment the perfectly manicured garden comes face to face with the wild, unstoppable truth. You know this isn't going to end well for the garden. What the judge does is devastatingly simple. He doesn't attack. He doesn't give a speech. He just stands there in the middle of their perfect city square and becomes a mirror of polished obsidian.
He simply reflects their world back at them. And what do they see? Not the noble, godlike beings they thought they were. Oh no. In that dark mirror, they see their own intellectual poverty, their slavish obedience, and the ugly, undeniable fact that they happily traded their honesty for a feeling of security. The mirror just burns away all their elaborate tales. And in that one terrible moment of clarity, the whole kingdom just comes apart. The towers don't fall because of an attack. They start to groan and crumble under the weight of the judge's silent, undeniable no. A simple, powerful rejection of all their lies. Their fragile garden couldn't handle even one dose of reality. So, after all the dust settles, what's the point? What's the lesson here? The story isn't really about destruction. It's about a choice that was there all along. And it really boils down to two paths. Path 1, hide in the garden. That's what the prince did. And the result is always, always the same. You live in a fragile illusion, which leads to fatal stagnation, and then collapse. You become a victim. Or there's path 2, embrace the abyss. It's terrifying, yeah. But the result is you find the highest dignity there is, the one that comes from truth, and you become the architect of the internal flame. That is the path of survival. Because here's the thing, the chaos, the change, the fire, it's coming. It comes for every perfect garden, for every single one of us. We don't get to choose if we face it. The only choice we have is how. Are you going to be the victim, passively waiting for the collapse? Or are you going to be the architect of your own forge and use that very same fire to create something real, something strong, something true?